Hello guys, Atlas here. I'm here with my shitty microphone and a completely unscripted video to talk about the Arkland tier list that I have promised you. The makeup of the list will be this. On the right, all the characters that participate in the RP are represented. On the left, all the forces of the RP are represented. I will base this tier list, going from S to F tier, on the personalities of the characters, on the inherent statistics of the force, and on how well I think it all fits into the setting of Arkland. So, let's begin immediately. I would like to begin with Estrid Hulgaard. I fundamentally like the character of Estrid. Yes, the face claim is a little mysterious, and you know how I feel about mysterious, but I think she fits in well as an abused northerner, as a horseman or horsewoman, whatever you might call her, someone who would take up arms, someone who would have a specific relationship helping and saving women. I like Esther Hugo as a character. I think she fits in well with the story itself. And I think some of the stories written about and for her are very heartwarming, very nice. They make sense. I am going to put her in A tier for that reason. Um, Let's talk about her force, the Hulgårgang. Because the Hulgårgang has no actual logo, I have chosen instead to appear the horses here. How do I think about the gang? Well, I think all throughout this RP, it was managed very well in the way that it was always kept in a good quality, always kept well supplied, always kept as well armed as possible. It also remained extremely mobile, fully mounted with movement bonuses. The force did a lot of good. It was a very great supporting force for the Northern Alliance. For that reason, I think the force is going into A tier next to Estelle. The only ill thing about it that I think is that the force did not expand numerically much, did not find many horses, did not go through the effort to expand rapidly. That is the reason it does not go into S tier. Alright, let us continue. Karl Edvard Jacobsen of the Jacobsen column. He is quintessentially Arkish. He is quintessentially a flawed character, but a character who chooses the right side. He is kind with his family, what he considers his family, his grandparents. He's honest, he's direct, I like him as the stereotypical great Arklander. And I think Karl Edvard Jacobsen is the first S tier as a character. Now, the Jacobsen column fits in perfectly. I mean, it's the only proper, if you don't count the BSD, it's the only proper defector battalion. It's an elite. It's made for fighting and not much else. It's detested. It's got no legitimacy, but it's got a lot of trucks. It's got a lot of good rifles. It's a very potent fighting force, the muscle of the Northern Alliance, and perfectly realistic in the setting of the RP. Therefore, it's also getting an S tier. I think the play between the character and the force was also wonderful. I think it was all managed very well. It is one of my favorites. Maybe it's not the most interesting force. It's not super complicated, but I like it for that very reason. Edvard the Yngling, the king, who never also got a face claim. I love the character. It was a product of deep talks with Herrick about what could be done with min-maxing, and an agreement on legitimacy maxing. He's a perfectly reasonable character to have, perfectly realistic. perfectly plausible in a time like this, where a monarch would have a lot of inherent legitimacy that not many others would be able to match. And him using that legitimacy, I'm going to put him as a character in S tier. Now again, no picture for the Kingsmen. I've chosen the House Azaro banner because I hate them. I think the Kingsmen had a lot of potential that was not realized. A lot of time was spent on preparations and administrative matters that kind of handicapped the growth of the Kingsmen in a lot of ways. And it never became a proper true mass force in a way that I had expected it to be, using the popularity and legitimacy of the king to recruit a lot of people at the same time. Um, it also didn't achieve a terrible lot. Yes, it conquered a lot of the West, but it also just skipped some garrisons in the South, which would have been a problem if the game had lasted longer. Um, so the Kingsmen, due to have the association with the character, it goes into B tier. Who to go for now? Danilo Sokolov, or the Bokatyr. No, you're watching, Alan. Hi. I like him as a character. Very complicated with his half-blood heritage, with him being half Zanarian, half Arkish, being one of the longest fighting freedom fighters, except for the Green Band. I liked the character, very single-minded and very dedicated to the role as well. Um, the character just seemed like a very one-track, plausible personality, but it also became a very background figure, as he would very often simply defer to the opinion of Lindstrom, which is not bad for the character, but that sadly precludes them from an S tier, but they still land in a very, very solid and respectable A tier. Now, the Republican Army, instant S tier. Quintessential what Arkland is. Freedom fighters that have been fighting for a long time, both desperately, directly, heads-on, bold, action, a territorial army in the middle of enemy territory. This is what I expected a lot more people to be running. But in the end, there were only two proper forces of this kind. There was the Republican Army and there was the Jakobsen column. Um, Also, the Bokatyr is just a cool ass name. There's no other way to put it. All right, who is next? Let's go for Sönrud. I mean, a lot of writing has been done by Tree, and great respect for the writing done by Tree. But he's a very, very single-minded, narrow character in a lot of ways, and that can be great. I've just praised Sokolov for being a one-track character, quintessential in the North, but at the same time, I feel like it was exaggerated. A lot of the things. I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad character, not by any stretch, but I am saying that a lot of what he did was very exaggerated. At least in the terms of personality, which does again preclude from getting an S tier. Um, I don't hate him. Again, hate is reserved for down here, but not my favorite as a character individually. Now, the Black Spade Division, wonderfully written, wonderfully made, very realistic, which would ordinarily put it in an S tier, but very ill suited for what Arkland became, which was a very fast-paced RP, where this would be a lot better in a more slower-paced RP. I'm gonna have to put the BSD as a force in C tier, simply because of how mismatched it was with what the RP became, which is not the fault of Tree. Not entirely, it's as much a fault of me as a game master, but this is sadly what it came to. Peter Ljung, I like his backstory. It's a lot more simple, less more humble. I mean, he got lashes, he saw his family being abused, and decided to do something about it at a young age, fought from the shadows, often betrayed. He achieved what he set out to achieve. He didn't have pretensions of being something he wasn't. Neither in his gameplay, nor in his achievements, nor in his stature. A generally very humble character, limited in scope, but happy with those limitations. He is quintessentially Arkland with his assassination style focused gameplay as well. I'm gonna have to put him in S tier as a character. The Green Band also goes into a very crowded S tier. Maybe see a pattern. Um, the Green Band, again, as an extension of Peter Long, again, it's set out to achieve what it set out to achieve. It didn't have pretensions of being something it isn't. Didn't try to switch or become something that it never was. And in the end, it only did what it was optimized to do, and it fits within the Arkland setting. And I like it. I like it a lot. All right. Geovide. Geovide was a latecomer. Um, I do quite like Geovide for the reason that I expected a lot more rural-focused characters in a country as rural country as Arkland. He felt very simple, maybe also just from the fact that not a lot was written about him, and that he did not participate in many of the social events in the RP, limited as they were. My bad. But he's still realistic, but not super exciting, in my opinion. And I'm gonna put him in a B tier for that. Rule League of Arkland, um, it fits extremely well. It does what it sets out to do. It did not, in the same way, again, become a mass movement as I expected. And for that reason, it's going into an A tier instead of an S tier. Um, Large, yes, but smaller than I expected. I expected it to become the largest force, but it did not. Um, but I still like it. I still think it fit the RP as a whole, the setting of Arkland. Moving on, Guzon Komengini, or however the hell I'm supposed to pronounce that name. The first character made for Arkland, and one I did not like at first, but it slowly developed into something a lot more real, something more useful, something more valid to the setting. Jed and I had many conversations about him. And in the end, I think he's going in an A tier. The reason it's not S is, well, I think parts of his character was perhaps a little extreme. The naming says it all. It's kind of a joke character on Ayatollah Khomeini, and I'm not the biggest fan of joke or lookalike characters. Um, but still, not bad. Not totally unfair to the setting as well. The Folios are Hidenscape, um, which is just an extension of him as an army. It goes directly next to him because there's functionally no difference. I know he wasn't the official commander. I know Mekost was officially the commander, his son, but they are intrinsically linked by the hip. There's no moving around it. Eraun, combat. I expected a lot more leftists. Eraun is like one of the few diehard, diehard leftists in this RP. Um, the way she unifies a left support in a country like Arkland, and the way that she started off as like a terrorist, and again, All Women's Liberation League as a feminist as well in a country like Arkland, dominated by a highly misogynistic culture, both the invading culture and the living culture, native culture. I think she's a highly realistic character that fit the setting, and therefore she goes in a very crowded S tier. I think you can tell that I genuinely like a lot of what you made. Um, and of course, the All Women's Liberation League, it's going into an A tier. What holds it from an S tier is the fact that it changed a lot because it felt like neither really me, the Force itself, or Parm, who controlled the character and the Force, really knew what they she wanted it to be. And I don't hate it. Actually, the unclarity, I'm gonna have to put it in a B tier instead. I'm sorry. It's it's just changed too much for me to properly rate it within the setting. I think with an Arkland Redux, this could have been an A or an S tier, but with how everything turned out, um, yeah. All right, to one of my favorites, and I doubtless many's favorite, Sasha Tuason. As a character, I love this lady. The Game Master actions were fiendishly difficult to manage because of how alternative the character was. Extremely upbeat, very unrealistic, but in a good way, right? But therefore, she cannot go in it. However much I love her, the highest she can ever go is an A tier. The Force. I know this isn't the official picture, but this is just the best picture that you ever made, so this is wonderful. I love this, so I picked it. The Flying Aces did not fit the Arkland formula, and we know this. I love the character. I do not love the Force. I really don't. It did a lot of good for other players. Definitely did, but it has to go in a D tier or like a low C, high D tier. It just did not fit the format of Arkland, and we know this. It was because the participation of Dust was unclear at the time, and something unconventional had to be dragged in. Um, but that's what it is. I have to be honest in my opinions on this in this list. All right, Yahaloga, which is Kiro's character. I don't know if you're watching. Hello if you are. We basically got to see nothing of this character, which is sad. And it is sad because I have to put it in a C tier at the very max, a D tier, probably more fairly, because we just never got to see her. And I understand why. Absolute respect to Kiro for prioritizing their mental health over everything else. I completely respect that, and I do not hold it against them. But as this is a tier list of the RP that I made and not of the persons behind the characters, this sadly has to be the case. And again, with the Force, it's interesting, but it's ill-fitting, I believe. The foreign-trained Arklanders jumping in parachutes, going all sneaky style. Maybe it's because I didn't get a lot of time to spend with them, but I still feel it sits in a C tier. That is the completed list. Now, would I make any changes to this at all? I would not. No, I think this is my list. Uh, all the rankings are equal. That someone goes first or last does not mean I feel they are better or worse. This is the final Arkland tier list, in my view. And again, it's a combination of the characters themselves and the forces, and then how they fit into what I imagine as the role in Arkland. Do not take this personally, because it is not directed at your person nor your skill as an RPer. You could be a wonderful RPer, a wonderful storyteller, but if your story does not fit within the vision that I had in my mind, then your character is going in a specific, or force is going in a specific place in the tier list. That should be it. If you have any questions, do ping me in the questions and comments channel, and I will respond to them as soon as I see them. Thank you for listening to my rambles, and have a nice day.